The night was colder than usual. A thin layer of mist floated above the empty road, and the sound of the young man's footsteps echoed against the walls of old buildings. He carried a plastic bag filled with leftover food. Every night after finishing his late shift, he took the same path and left food for the stray dogs near the alley. It had become his small habit, something that made him feel a little better about the world. He turned the corner expecting to hear barking. Normally the dogs would run up before he even opened the bag. They had learned his scent, learned that he never came empty-handed. But tonight the street was silent. The shadows stretched across the walls, and the only sound was the faint buzzing of a streetlight that flickered as if it was about to die. He stopped at the entrance of the alley. The bag of food swung slightly in his hand. "Strange," he whispered. "Where are they tonight?" The air inside the alley felt heavy. He walked in slowly, his shoes crunching against broken glass. The smell of damp bricks and rust made the place feel even more lifeless than usual. He crouched down near the wall, placed the bag of food on the ground, and opened it. Steam rose into the cold air. Fried rice bread and some chicken bones. Normally, the dogs would have appeared by now, pushing each other, wagging their tails. But the silence remained. He waited for a minute. 2 minutes, nothing. His heart started to beat faster, though he couldn't explain why. There was no reason to be scared. Maybe the dogs had gone somewhere else, maybe they found food earlier. Still, the silence was strange. Too complete. He stood up, brushing his hands on his jeans. "Guess no one's hungry tonight," he muttered, forcing a nervous laugh. He turned around, ready to leave. That was when he felt it, the feeling of eyes. The back of his neck prickled. Every step forward became heavier, as if something in the shadows wanted him to stop. He froze. The sound of his own breathing filled his ears. Slowly, he turned his head. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light. 2 small shapes stood at the far end of the alley. Not dogs. Not even close. He blinked hard, trying to clear his vision. They were girls. 2 thin figures, both trembling as they leaned against each other for support. Their clothes were torn, their arms covered in dirt, and their hair hung down in tangled strands. But it wasn't their clothes or their weakness that made his chest tighten. It was their eyes. The first girl's eyes glowed faintly, a soft blue light that seemed to shine from within her. The second girl's eyes were green, but not like any green he had ever seen. They looked alive, shifting, almost like liquid. For a long moment, no one moved. The young man's throat went dry. "What the hell?" he whispered under his breath. The girls' gazes were locked on the food. They didn't speak, didn't move closer. They just stared, their thin arms clutching each other tightly. He took a step back, his mind racing. Should he run? Should he yell? Were they even real? But his legs refused to move. Something inside him, curiosity, maybe pity, kept him standing there. The younger-looking girl tilted her head. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Her stomach growled loudly in the silent alley. The sound made the man flinch. They weren't just strange. They were starving. He glanced at the bag of food still open on the ground. The warm steam curled into the night. He swallowed hard, then, very slowly, he pushed the bag a little closer with the tip of his shoe. "Go on," he said, his voice shaking. "If you're hungry, eat." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the girls moved. Not like humans. Their steps were clumsy, unbalanced, but fast. Like wild animals driven only by hunger. They dropped to their knees in front of the food, hands shaking as they grabbed at the bread and rice. They ate without care, stuffing their mouths as if afraid the food would disappear. The man stood frozen, watching in disbelief. He could see their faces more clearly now under the weak light. Yes, they looked young, like children or maybe teenagers, but their skin was strange. Not just dirty, strange. Pale, almost translucent in some places, with faint glowing lines running along their arms like veins filled with light. His chest tightened. His breath came fast. He whispered the thought that had been clawing at the back of his mind. "They're not human." The words felt heavy in the air, yet as he watched them devour the food with desperate energy, he couldn't move away. They were strange, yes, terrifying even, but they were also fragile, weak, hungry. Just 2 starving girls in the night clinging to each other like they had no one else in the world. The man's hands trembled. He didn't know if he should be afraid or protective. Maybe both. All he knew was that his life had just changed. and nothing about this night would ever be normal again. And then, as one of the girls lifted her glowing eyes toward him with food still in her hands, the truth hit him even harder. They weren't lost. They were hiding. The girls ate like they had never seen food before. Their thin hands trembled as they shoved bread into their mouths, rice falling onto the ground as they chewed without stopping. The young man stood frozen, his back pressed against the damp brick wall. He had fed hungry dogs here for months, but never imagined he would one day feed this. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. His first instinct was to run, to leave the alley, go home, and pretend none of this ever happened. But his feet refused to move. Something about the way the two figures huddled together kept him rooted in place. They weren't monsters. They weren't threatening him. They were starving. The smaller girl coughed as she tried to swallow too fast. The older one immediately reached out, patting her back gently, whispering something in a language he didn't understand. The sound was soft, almost musical, but filled with worry. The man's heartbeat slowed just a little. They weren't wild creatures. They were sisters. Who are you? He asked, his voice low but steady. The older girl looked up. Her glowing green eyes met his. For a moment he thought she would answer. Instead, she simply blinked, then lowered her head again, continuing to eat. The younger one raised her face. Her lips moved clumsily. The word that came out was broken but clear enough. Food, thank. The man's eyes widened. She spoke English. Not perfectly, but enough. You can talk? He whispered. The girl nodded slowly, then coughed again, pressing her hand against her thin stomach. Her skin glimmered faintly where the alley light touched it. The glowing veins under her skin pulsed like dim stars fading in and out. The man felt a shiver run through him. His brain screamed at him to back away, but his chest ached with pity. These weren't dangerous beings. They were children, hungry and broken. He took a cautious step forward. Are you lost? The younger one tilted her head, trying to understand. The older one finally raised her eyes again. Her voice was hoarse, as if unused for a long time. No, lost. She paused, searching for the right word. Hiding. The man froze. Hiding. That single word changed everything. Hiding from what? He asked, his voice a whisper now. The older girl didn't answer. She lowered her gaze again, pulling her sister close. The younger one tried again, struggling to form words. No home, no food, danger. The man's heart pounded louder. He stared at them, his thoughts racing. They weren't from here. That much was clear. No one on Earth had eyes like that. No one's skin glowed. No one's voice sounded like it carried the weight of the stars. And yet, here they were in his alley eating his food. The silence stretched. The only sounds were chewing and the distant hum of a car passing on the main road. The man finally crouched down, though he kept a safe distance. You're not from here, are you? The older girl's green eyes flashed for a second. She didn't nod, she didn't speak, but she didn't deny it either. The younger one looked at him carefully. Her lips moved again, forming words like they were heavy stones. Safe? She asked. Her voice cracked. You safe? The man's chest tightened. A dozen answers ran through his head. Safe for them, or safe for himself, because deep down he knew that if anyone else saw these girls, they wouldn't be safe at all. He took a deep breath, his voice quiet. Yes, I'm safe. I won't hurt you. The younger girl blinked, then gave a small nod. Her eyes softened for the first time. The older one still looked wary, but her shoulders lowered just slightly. For the first time since entering the alley, the man felt something other than fear. He felt a strange pull, a responsibility he couldn't explain. But then a sound broke the moment. The crack of glass under a shoe. The man's head snapped around. At the far end of the street, someone passed quickly, a shadow moving under the flickering streetlight. Not unusual, but it made his stomach twist. Were they being watched? He turned back to the girls. They had stopped eating. Both were staring at the same direction, their eyes wide with fear. Danger. The younger one whispered again, her body shaking. The man looked at them, then at the empty street, then back at them, his hands clenched into fists. He knew one thing for certain now. If he left them here, something bad would happen. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know what they were. But he couldn't just walk away. Come with me, he said firmly. The older girl narrowed her eyes. Why? Because if you stay here, you'll be found. And I think... He swallowed, his voice trembling. I think you don't want that. The sisters exchanged a look. For a moment, it seemed like they wouldn't move. But then the younger one stood wobbling on her weak legs. She held out her small hand, almost like a child trusting a stranger. The man stared at it. His chest tightened. Then slowly he reached out and took her hand. The older one hesitated, then followed. Together, they stepped out of the alley, and with that his quiet, ordinary life ended. The young man walked quickly, the cold air biting at his face. The city streets were quiet, but every shadow felt heavier now. He kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting someone to appear from the darkness. Behind him, the two strange girls followed closely. The younger one clutched his hand, her steps shaky but determined. The older one walked in silence, her green eyes watching everything with suspicion. She didn't trust him yet. He could feel it in the way her body stayed tense, ready to pull her sister away at the first sign of danger. When they finally reached his small apartment building, the man paused. He stared at the door, the peeling paint, the dim light above it. This was his private space. No one ever came here except him. For years, his life had been simple. Work, sleep, feed the dogs, repeat. Now he was about to bring two alien strangers into that life. His stomach tightened. Was this the right thing to do? He looked down at the younger girl. Her hand was cold in his, her glowing blue eyes wide with exhaustion. She leaned against him slightly as if she could collapse at any second. He sighed. He already knew the answer. He couldn't leave them outside. All right, he muttered, unlocking the door. Just stay quiet. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of coffee and dust. A single lamp lit the small living room with its worn-out sofa and stack of books on the table. It wasn't much, but at least it was safe. The girls stepped inside carefully as though crossing into another world. Their eyes darted around, studying everything. The older one touched the fabric of the sofa with her fingers, curious. The younger one's gaze fell on a family photo sitting on the shelf. The man younger standing beside his mother. She pointed at it, tilting her head. "Family?" she asked softly. The man's chest ached. "Yes, my mother," he paused. "She's gone now." The girl nodded slowly as if she understood the weight of that single word. Gone. The man sat down heavily on the chair, running his hands through his hair. Questions pressed at his mind. Who were they, really? Where did they come from? Why were they hiding? Finally, he asked, "Why are you here? On Earth?" The sisters exchanged a look. The older one stepped forward. Her English was rough, broken, but her meaning was clear. "Ship. Broken. We fall." She gestured with her hands, mimicking a crash. "No fix, no home." The man stared. His breath caught. A ship, of course. They weren't just lost. They had fallen from the sky. He rubbed his face, whispering, "This is insane." The older girl's expression grew hard. "Hunters," she said suddenly. Her voice was sharp now, filled with fear. "They look. They find. Kill." The younger one whimpered and pressed close to her sister. The man froze. Hunters, someone was after them. Maybe not just someone, something. Or worse, humans who already knew about them. His mind flashed back to the shadow he saw in the alley. The sound of glass breaking. He stood up suddenly, pacing the room. His apartment felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in. He had two choices. He could call the authorities, hand the girls over, and wash his hands of this madness. Or he could keep them here, protect them, and risk everything. The safer choice screamed in his head. Call. Let them handle it. But then he looked at them again. Two fragile figures sitting on his sofa holding each other. Not monsters, not invaders. Just children who had lost everything. His chest burned with the memory of the dogs he had fed every night. Nobody else cared about them either. He fed them because he couldn't stand the thought of them starving alone. And now these two weren't so different. He stopped pacing. His decision was made. "You can stay here. Just for now," he said firmly. The younger girl's eyes lit up faintly. "Safe?" she asked again. He nodded. "Safe. With me." For the first time, a small smile touched her lips. The older one still looked doubtful, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. The man sat back down, letting out a long breath. His life was no longer his own. By choosing to protect them, he had stepped into something far larger than himself. He didn't know what dangers were coming. He didn't know who these hunters were or how far they would go. But he knew one thing. If he abandoned the girls now, he would never forgive himself. The silence in the room grew heavy again, broken only by the faint hum of the fridge. The man leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "All right," he said softly. "If we're doing this, I need to know more. Everything you can tell me." The older girl studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Tomorrow," she said. "We tell tonight. We sleep." The man realized just how exhausted they were. Their eyelids drooped, their bodies sagging with fatigue. He quickly grabbed a blanket from his room and placed it over them on the sofa. As they curled up together, their faint glowing veins dimmed like fading lights. Within minutes they were asleep, breathing softly. The man stood there in the quiet room staring at them. His mind raced, his chest tight. He had made his decision. But outside, somewhere in the city, shadows were already moving, and the hunters would not stop until they found what they were looking for. Morning light slipped through the broken blinds, cutting thin golden lines across the small apartment. The young man woke with a start, the memory of the night rushing back to him like a wave. For a moment he thought it had been a dream, but then he turned his head. The two girls were still there. They were curled together on the sofa, wrapped in his old blanket. Their faint glow had dimmed overnight, but it was still visible if you looked closely, like fireflies hidden under their skin. Their breathing was steady, calm, almost childlike. The man rubbed his face. "What have I done?" he whispered. He made coffee, the bitter smell filling the air. When the steam whistled from the cup, the sound made the younger girl stir. Her eyes opened slowly, that strange blue glow greeting the morning light. For a second, fear flickered in her gaze as if she had forgotten where she was. But when she saw him, she relaxed. "Safe?" she asked again, her small voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "Safe, I promised." The older one woke next. She sat up immediately, alert, her green eyes scanning the room like a soldier checking for threats. She didn't look at the man right away. She looked at the window, the door, the shadows. Only then did her eyes meet his. "You ask," she said slowly. "We tell." The man set his coffee down, his hands tightening around the cup. He leaned forward. "I need to know everything. Who you are, where you came from, why you're hiding." The girls exchanged a look. The older one nodded to her sister, who spoke first, her words broken but clear. "Not from here, far, far sky." She lifted her thin hand upward, pointing at the ceiling as if pointing through it, straight into the heavens. "Different world. Our home." The man's heart skipped. His suspicion was now truth. They weren't just strange kids, they were from another planet. The older girl took over, her English sharper, though heavy with an accent. "We travel. Ship broken. Hunters follow. We fall here." She gestured again, her hands moving like a craft plunging downward. Crash! The man leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. His pulse raced. "Hunters?" The older girl's face hardened. "Not people. Not like you, like machines, cold killers." The younger one shivered, clutching the blanket tighter. "Hunters, no stop. Always follow." The man felt his throat tighten. Machines that hunted across the stars. His small apartment, his tiny life, suddenly felt like it was balanced on the edge of something far too big for him to understand. He tried to steady his voice. "Why you? Why are they after you?" The sisters went silent. Their eyes met again, some unspoken message passing between them. Finally, the older one spoke. Last," the man frowned. "Last," she nodded slowly. "Our world, gone. Hunters destroy. No more people. Only us." The word struck him like a blow. He stared at them, the weight sinking in. They weren't just lost children. They were the last survivors of their kind. Two alien girls carrying the memory of an entire destroyed world. The room felt colder. The younger one's voice cracked as she added, "No family. No home. Only run." Her glowing eyes filled with tears, the blue light shimmering like water. The man felt his chest ache. He had lost his mother years ago and carried that pain every day. But their pain was beyond anything he could imagine. Losing not just a parent, but an entire planet. He reached out slowly, placing his hand on the table. Not too close, but close enough that they knew he wasn't pulling away. "You're not alone anymore. You have me now." The younger girl blinked, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. The older one studied him carefully, her suspicions softening just a little. But then she leaned forward, her voice low and serious. "You help us? Danger comes to you." The man met her glowing gaze. His voice was steady, though his heart pounded. Maybe, but I can't let you face it alone. Silence stretched in the room again. Then the younger one smiled faintly, her first true smile since he had met her. The man stood and walked to the window, pulling the blinds just enough to peek outside. Cars passed, people walked, the city looked the same. But he knew it wasn't. Somewhere out there, hunters were searching. Somewhere in the shadows, danger was already moving closer. He turned back to the girls. If these hunters are real, we need a plan. You can't just hide here forever. The older one tilted her head. Plan? Yes, he said firmly. If someone's coming for you, we need to stay ahead of them. You said your ship crashed. Where? The older girl hesitated. The younger one whispered. Forest. Far broken, we leave. Too scared. The man's mind raced. If the ship was out there, maybe there were answers inside. Maybe something to help them or proof that he wasn't losing his mind. He nodded. Then that's where we go. Tonight. The sisters looked at each other again. The older one finally gave a short nod. The man's pulse quickened. He had gone from feeding stray dogs to planning a trip to a crashed alien ship in less than 24 hours. His life was spinning out of control, but he couldn't stop now. He glanced at them again, fragile yet glowing faintly in his small apartment. He whispered to himself, almost too quiet for them to hear. 2 starving girls, and now the last of their kind. The truth was stranger than he could have ever imagined, and it was only the beginning. Evening settled over the city, painting the streets in shades of gray and orange. The young man paced his small apartment, glancing again and again at the window. His chest felt heavy, as if the air itself had grown tighter. The girl sat quietly on the sofa, wrapped in the blanket. The younger one hummed softly to herself, rocking back and forth, her faint blue glow flickering like a candle. The older one, however, was stiff and alert. She watched him pace, her green eyes sharp, following every move. You nervous, she said simply. The man stopped, running a hand through his hair. Of course I'm nervous. I don't even know what I'm doing. 2 nights ago I was just feeding dogs. Now I'm... He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. The older girl tilted her head. Now you! Protect. Her words were blunt, but they struck him deep. Protect. Was that what he was doing? He wanted to believe it. But as the night grew darker, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was already looking for them. He pulled the blinds back just a crack. Down on the street, a black car sat parked across from the building. Its windows were tinted. Its engine was silent. The man's stomach dropped. It hadn't been there earlier. He closed the blinds quickly, his pulse pounding in his ears. He tried to stay calm, but his hands shook. We have a problem, he said, his voice low. The girls looked up. The younger one's glow dimmed with fear. The older one narrowed her eyes. Hunters? I don't know, the man whispered. But someone's watching. The room fell silent. The sound of the fridge buzzing seemed louder than ever. The younger girl pulled the blanket up to her chin, trembling. The man took a deep breath, trying to think. He had 2 options. He could pretend nothing was wrong and hope the car left. Or he could act now before it was too late. His gut told him the truth. Waiting was a mistake. We can't stay here, he said. If that's them, they'll come inside. And if it's not them, I'm not risking it. The older girl stood, her face serious. Then we go now, the younger one whimpered. Scared. The man crouched beside her. I know, I'm scared too. But staying here isn't safe anymore. You trust me, right? Her glowing eyes met his. After a long pause, she nodded. Good, he said softly. Then we moved together. He quickly stuffed some food, water, and tools into a backpack. His hands moved fast, but his mind kept spinning. He wasn't a soldier, not a hero. He didn't know how to fight shadowy hunters or survive on the run. But the thought of handing the girls over made his stomach twist. As he zipped the bag shut, the younger girl gasped. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter. They come. The man froze. What? She pointed at the door, her hand shaking. Her voice broke into a cry. They come now. Before he could react, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Slow, deliberate, not the sound of neighbors coming home. The man's heart hammered. He turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness. Only the faint glow of the girls lit the air. He whispered, Quiet. Don't make a sound. The footsteps stopped outside his door. For a long, terrible second, silence filled the building. Then a knock. It wasn't loud. Just 3 steady taps, calm and cold. The man's breath caught. He didn't move. Neither did the girls. Another knock. This one harder, The older girl whispered, "Not safe." The man grabbed his backpack and motioned toward the back window. It was small, barely big enough for him to climb through, but it led to the alley. "Go!" he hissed. The younger one scrambled first, then the older one. He pushed them through, his hands shaking. As he climbed out last, the door behind him rattled, the sound of someone trying to force it open. He didn't look back. He dropped into the alley, landing hard on the concrete. The night air smelled damp and sharp, filled with the faint sound of sirens in the distance. The girls clung to him, trembling. The younger one whispered, "Hunters." The man tightened his grip on the backpack. Whoever or whatever was at his door, he couldn't face them here. They had to keep moving. They hurried down the alley, the older girl leading the way. Her glowing veins pulsed brighter, as if reacting to the danger. She whispered something in her strange language, and the younger one nodded, clutching her sister's hand. The man glanced back once. The black car's doors were open now. Dark figures stepped out, their movements smooth, too smooth. Their faces were hidden, their footsteps silent. They didn't move like ordinary people, his chest clenched. These weren't just agents or police, the hunters had found them. He pulled the girls closer. "Run," he said, his voice shaking. "Don't stop." And into the night they ran, 3 shadows against the city lights, chased by something colder than death. The night swallowed them as they ran, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the narrow alley. The man's lungs burned, every breath sharp and shallow. The girls kept close to him, their faint glow flickering in the dark like beacons. He wanted them to dim it, to hide it, but he knew they couldn't. It wasn't something they controlled. Behind them, the hunters followed, silent, relentless. Their black shapes moved with an unnatural smoothness, gliding more than walking. No heavy breaths, no stumbles, just shadows that never slowed. The man's heart hammered harder. He had never been chased before, not like this. Fear made his legs feel heavy, but the thought of the girls being caught pushed him forward. They burst out of the alley onto an empty street. A single streetlight buzzed overhead, its glow pale and cold. The younger girl stumbled, almost falling. He caught her arm and pulled her upright. "Keep going," he gasped. The older one's green eyes glowed brighter now, scanning every path ahead. She grabbed his sleeve, tugging him toward a side road. This way, safe, he didn't argue. She seemed to sense something he couldn't. They darted through back streets, climbing over fences, slipping past trash cans. The man's backpack dug into his shoulders, the weight of food and tools bouncing with every step. Still, he clutched it tight. They might need every scrap to survive. Behind them, the hunters never shouted, never called out. But their presence pressed like a cold hand on the man's neck. Whenever he risked a glance back, they were still there. Not close enough to grab them, but not far either. Always the same distance. Always waiting. "What do they want?" he whispered between breaths. The older girl's voice was flat. "Us, only us. They know stop." Her words chilled him more than the cold night air. They crossed into an abandoned lot. Rusted cars sat half buried in weeds, broken glass crunching underfoot. The man slowed, chest heaving. They couldn't keep running like this. They needed to hide, at least for a moment. "In here," he hissed, pulling them toward the hollow shell of a van. Its windows were gone, its doors hanging crooked. It smelled of rust and damp, but it was cover. They crouched inside, breathing hard. The younger girl buried her face against her sister's shoulder, her glow dimming to a faint shimmer. The man peeked through a crack in the metal, his heart thudding so loud he thought it might give them away. The hunters appeared at the edge of the lot. They moved in formation, scanning the shadows. Their heads turned sharply, unnaturally precise, like machines. One of them paused. Its face tilted up as if sniffing the air. The man's grip tightened on the metal edge. His mind screamed, "Don't move. Don't breathe." Minutes passed like hours. The hunters spread out, searching. One stepped closer to the van, its black boots crunching the glass. The man's chest tightened until it hurt. The younger girl whimpered. The sound was soft, but in the silence it felt loud as thunder. The hunter froze. Its head snapped toward the van. The man's stomach dropped. "Go!" he whispered harshly, grabbing the girls. They scrambled out the back of the van just as the hunter lunged. A cold metallic hand swiped through the space they had just been. Sparks flickered where its fingers scraped the van's frame. The chase was on again. The man pushed the girls ahead of him. They sprinted across the lot, leaping over debris, the hunters closing fast. His legs ached, his chest burned, but adrenaline kept him moving. They reached a chain-link fence. The man boosted the younger girl up, her small hands gripping the metal desperately. The older one climbed next, her glowing veins casting faint light on the fence. "Come," she shouted. He scrambled up after them, the fence rattling under his weight. Behind, a hunter slammed into the fence, its hands clawing upward with inhuman speed. The man threw himself over the top, landing hard on the other side. Pain shot up his ankle, but he forced himself up. He grabbed the younger girl's hand again, pulling her forward. They stumbled into another street. This one was darker, lined with warehouses and locked gates. The older girl stopped suddenly, her eyes glowing brighter. She pulled a small object from under her torn clothes. It looked broken. Metal, wires, a faint pulse of light flickering weakly. "What is that?" the man asked, panting. "Beacon," she said. "Ship here." If fixed, the man's eyes widened. "You've had that this whole time?" She nodded. "Broken, no work. Need time." Time was the one thing they didn't have. The hunters were climbing the fence behind them, closing in again. The man looked around desperately. Then he spotted it, a warehouse door, half open, shadows deep inside. "There," he shouted. They rushed inside, the metal door creaking as he shoved it closed behind them. The space was vast, filled with crates and old machines. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe. The girls huddled together, the beacon clutched tightly. The man leaned against the door, listening. Outside, footsteps echoed. The hunters had followed. The older girl looked at him. "Need fix. Need safe place." His hands shook. "Then this is it. Whatever happens, we hold them off long enough for you to fix that thing." The younger one's glowing blue eyes filled with fear. "You fight?" He nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. "If I have to." The warehouse grew silent again. Only the faint glow of the sisters lit the dark, and the broken beacon pulsed like a dying star. The hunters were coming. The warehouse was silent, except for the faint pulse of the broken beacon. The small device lay in the older girl's hands, its weak light flickering like it was breathing. She sat on the floor with her sister close beside her, both glowing faintly in the dark. The man stood near the door listening. The hunters were outside. He could hear their steps, slow, measured, patient. They were not rushing. They knew their prey was trapped. The man's palms were slick with sweat. His heart thudded like a drum in his chest. He grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the ground, gripping it tightly. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. The older girl looked up at him. "We fix," she said simply. "Need time." He nodded. "I'll buy it." Her green eyes held his for a moment, searching. She didn't smile, didn't thank him. But something in her gaze softened. A silent understanding passed between them. The younger girl tugged at his sleeve. Her small voice trembled. "Safe, you promise?" He crouched, forcing a smile even though his stomach was tight with fear. "Yes, I promised. I'll keep you safe." She nodded slowly, then turned back to the beacon, helping her sister with clumsy hands. The man rose again, pipe in hand. The footsteps grew closer, echoing off the concrete walls. He took a deep breath. "Come on, then," he whispered. The first hunter appeared in the doorway. Its figure was tall, its face hidden under shadow, but its eyes glowed faint red like embers. It stepped inside without a sound, followed by another, then another. The man's grip tightened. His whole body shook, but he didn't move away. He stood between them and the girls. "Not today," he muttered. The hunters spread out, moving like shadows through the warehouse, their heads tilted, scanning, searching. Behind him, the older girl muttered in her strange tongue, her hands working quickly with wires and metal. Sparks jumped from the beacon. The younger one whispered encouragement, her glow flickering brighter as if feeding the device. The man swung the pipe at the nearest hunter. The metal rang against its arm, sending vibrations up his bones. The hunter barely flinched. Its head snapped toward him, movement sharp and mechanical. It lunged, he dodged, barely, the air cold against his cheek as its hand swept past. He swung again, aiming for the head this time. The impact knocked it back a step, but not down. The man gritted his teeth. "I'm not letting you touch them." Another hunter closed in. He backed up, heart racing, sweat dripping down his neck. His arms burned already, but he didn't stop. He swung, blocked, ducked, using every ounce of strength to hold them off. Behind him, the beacon's pulse grew stronger. The older girl cried out, "Almost!" The warehouse lit up suddenly as the device flared bright, filling the dark with silver light. The hunters froze for a split second, their red eyes flickering. The man turned. The beacon floated now, humming with power. A beam of light shot upward, piercing through the roof, cutting into the night sky. The girls stood, clutching each other, their glowing veins brighter than ever. The younger one looked at him, tears shining in her blue eyes. "Ship comes," the man's breath caught. They had done it. They had called for rescue, but the hunters surged forward again, faster now, desperate. The man swung wildly, knocking one back, but another grabbed his arm, its grip like iron. Pain shot through him as the pipe clattered to the ground. "No," he shouted, struggling. The older girl raised her hands. A surge of green light exploded from her veins, throwing the hunter backward. Her body shook from the effort, but she didn't fall. "Go," she shouted. "Time is short." The roof above them split open. A massive shadow blotted out the stars, a ship descending silently. Its surface gleamed with alien light, strange symbols glowing across its hull. The air vibrated as it hovered, pulling at the beacon's energy. The younger girl grabbed the man's hand. "Come," she begged. "With us safe," he froze. His heart twisted. If he went, he would leave everything behind. His city, his home, his life. He would vanish into the stars with two alien girls he had just met. If he stayed, he would face the hunters alone, maybe die, but Earth was his home, his place. The older girl's voice cut through his thoughts. "Choose, now." The ship's ramp opened, a glowing path leading upward. The hunters rose again, closing in, their red eyes blazing. The man's chest heaved, sweat dripped from his brow. His grip tightened around the younger girl's hand. He looked into her glowing eyes, into her sister's determined stare, and in that moment he knew his choice. He pulled the younger girl closer, voice trembling. "Go, both of you. Don't look back." The younger one's eyes widened. "But go," he shouted. The older girl grabbed her sister, dragging her toward the ramp. The younger one cried, reaching back for him. "Safe, you promised." His throat closed. He forced a smile through the fear. "You'll be safe. That's what matters." The ramp lifted, pulling them into the ship. The hunters lunged, but the ship's light flared, blasting them back in a burst of energy. The man shielded his eyes as the warehouse filled with brilliance. When he looked again, the ship was gone. Only silence remained. The hunters, too, had vanished, burned away or retreating into the night. The man stood alone in the wreckage, chest heaving, the smell of ozone heavy in the air. His pipe lay broken at his feet. He sank to his knees, tears burning his eyes. He had kept his promise. The girls were safe. Somewhere out there, far beyond the stars, they lived. But he remained. Alone. He looked up at the empty sky, whispering into the night, "Be safe, little ones." And for the first time in his life, he felt the world around him was much larger and much darker than he had ever imagined.